Why 1970s? Working-class families were tougher than you think. The 1970s weren't all disco balls and bell-bottoms. For working-class families in Britain, it was a decade of power cuts, job losses, and cold mornings. But what they lacked in luxury, they made up for in backbone. Through strikes, shortages, and social shifts, they kept calm and carried on, with a kettle on the stove and a joke on their lips. This is why 1970s working-class families were tougher than you think. A look back at the grit, resilience, and neighborly love that shaped a generation in the face of every storm. Life in the dark, blackouts, and grit. The 1970s energy crisis hit the UK hard, and the working class felt it most. With miners' strikes and industrial unrest, rolling blackouts became part of life. Entire neighborhoods lost power for hours, but there was no panic. Families lit candles, wrapped up in blankets, and got on with things. Television sets flickered off mid-program, but it didn't matter. Children learned to read by torchlight. Games like Ludo and Snap filled the silence, and conversation returned to the dinner table. Parents boiled kettles on gas stoves. Mums warmed babies by the fire, while dads fetched coal from the yard. These households didn't just endure the dark, they embraced it with quiet resolve. And that's why 1970s working-class families were tougher than you think, because they refused to let the dark dampen their light. Jobs that took everything and gave just enough. In the towns where chimneys rose and whistles blew, life followed the shift pattern. Men worked in steel, shipbuilding, or coal. Women packed biscuits, sewed garments, or cleaned offices. These jobs weren't just tough, they were brutal. Steelworkers stood in searing heat for hours. Miners disappeared underground for entire shifts. Work gloves couldn't always stop the blisters, and protective gear was often little more than a flat cap and nerves of steel. Women rushed from factory floors to school gates, juggling deadlines and dinner. Yet, there was pride. People didn't talk about job satisfaction. They talked about providing. That mattered more. You earned your keep, even if it cost you your back and your boots. These jobs were the backbone of the UK economy, and the families who kept them going were built of iron, not excuses. The Art of Scraping: Buy Food, Clothes, and Fixes. Working-class families in the 1970s were masters of thrift. Money didn't stretch, it snapped, but every penny was made to count. Groceries were carefully planned. The Sunday roast became Monday sandwiches and Tuesday stew. Meat was a treat. Vegetables came from allotments. Eggs were from a neighbor's hens. You never threw food away. Stale bread became bread pudding. Cold potatoes became bubble and squeak. Sugar and butter were rationed not by law, but by necessity. Clothes were handed down, patched and repatched. Mums stitched socks while watching Coronation Street. Dads fixed bikes with wire and hope. You couldn't afford new shoes, so you resoled the old ones. This wasn't seen as poverty, it was seen as resourcefulness. And that spirit still lingers in the cupboards and coat hooks of older British homes. The cold never bothered them much. Central heating? That was something the posh families had. In working-class homes, heat came from one coal fire, usually in the front room. The rest of the house? Icy. You could see your breath in the hallway and feel frost on the window panes. But there were solutions. Hot water bottles were filled before bed. Blankets were stacked high. Kids wore knitted vests and thick socks to sleep. In some homes, the tin bath still made appearances on Sundays, dragged into the kitchen for a weekly scrub, and yet, somehow, they were warm. Not just in body, but in spirit. The fire wasn't just for heat. It was the hearth, the heart, the place where families gathered, stories were told, and everything felt safe, even when the rest of the world didn't. Childhood was rough and real. To grow up in the 1970s, Britain was to grow up outside. Streets weren't dangerous, they were playgrounds. You played football in alleyways, hopscotch on pavements, and rode your bike until the light faded and your legs gave out. Children made their own fun. They climbed trees, scraped knees, and learned how to argue and make up. They were latchkey kids before the term existed, trusted to make their way home and look after siblings until mom or dad returned. Television was rationed. Rainy days meant coloring, puzzles, or building things from empty cereal boxes. You didn't have the internet. You had imagination. Life wasn't always fair, but it was full. You learned respect early. You knew not to answer back, not to waste food, and to say thank you whether you meant it or not. Women were the backbone of the home. Behind every strong family was a woman balancing everything. She managed the budget, cooked meals, cleaned house, sorted laundry, handled school matters, and often held down a job. She did it all and made it look easy. She could make a meal from almost nothing. A tin of beans, a bit of mince, and a few carrots. Dinner. She knew how to cure a cold, remove a stain, and keep 5 kids quiet with a pack of playing cards. Some worked evenings after Dad got home. Others cleaned other people's homes before tending to their own. And when the stress mounted, a cup of tea, a quick chat with the neighbor, and back to work. These women didn't ask for help, they didn't ask for praise, but without them, nothing worked. The safety net was your neighbor. If your boiler broke in winter, you knocked next door. If your child was late, the lady across the street had probably seen them. The working-class communities of the 1970s were bound not by fences, but by trust. People borrowed sugar, cups of tea, even their neighbor's pram. Births, deaths, and birthdays were shared across backyards and on shared stairwells. Struggles weren't hidden. They were met with casseroles and cuppas. Children played together across streets. Families holidayed in the same caravan parks. Community halls were alive with bingo nights, dance classes, and raffles. That sense of unity, a village within a street, is something many people today crave. It's another reason why 1970s working-class families were tougher than you think, because when one fell, the others lifted them up. Finding laughter in the struggle. Hardship doesn't erase humor, it sharpens it, and nowhere was that more true than in 1970s Britain. The working class didn't wait for good times to laugh, they made jokes in the face of bad ones. A burnt dinner? A punchline. A late bill? A laugh with the neighbor. Banter flew freely at work, in the pub, and at the dinner table. Sarcasm was currency. Self-deprecation was an art form. Television offered some relief. The two Ronnies, Steptoe and Son, and Faulty Towers brought joy into living rooms. But the real comedy happened between families, over mashed potatoes and meat pies. Laughter didn't change the circumstances, but it changed how you faced them. It made the struggle bearable, and sometimes even beautiful. They didn't have much, but what they had, they made last. Working-class families of the 1970s were forged in fire, knitted together with love, and powered by resilience. Why 1970s? Working-class families were tougher than you think isn't just a title, it's the truth, and it deserves to be remembered, celebrated, and passed on. Thank you for watching this video. Please subscribe and turn on the notifications.